Here's a little known gem I recently picked up. Flying Heroes was released only in Europe back in 2000, and it was developed by two small Czech studios. So it's quite understandable that it faded into obscurity. It's a shame, as its premise has a lot of potential. The game is an FPS set in a fantasy world, where you control flying ships and animals, rather than a guy with a gun. It's sort of reminiscent of the Descent series, as well as Bullfrog's Flying Carpet. I wonder this style of game never became more popular, as I see huge possibilities in the genre. There are 4 different factions, each with their own ships and weapons. There are the dragon-riding lizard raiders, Magion, who are mages who cast spells and ride magic carpets and teacups, Hammercraft, whose ships are more durable and powerful, but slower and clumsier, and Sky Knights, who ride fast-moving birds. The weapon selection reminds me of Hexen. What's nice is each faction has their own unique weapons that are themed after them. Of course, some weapons do feel like palette swaps, but you've also got unique ones like a homing missile you can control. The different factions also have unique skills which are called combos in the manual, but I never used them. The game plays like a mix between an FPS and a space sim. The deathmatch style battles are fought on different fantasy themed arenas that are full of ammo, health, and special power pickups. So it's a lot like Unreal Tournament in Quake 3 Arena. The only difference is that you're flying around the stages. The feedback and feeling you get from firing weapons and killing enemies doesn't feel as satisfying as it does in those arena shooters, but it is still fun to take down enemies. Although there are controls for adjusting the camera, locking onto enemies, and using items, the control scheme is simpler than in space combat simulators. With the default options, you use the arrow keys for movement, mouse for aiming and shooting, and right control and shift buttons for ascending and descending. And there's a bunch of other shortcuts you can use, but I was able to fight against bots using just those keys. My biggest complaint with the game is actually the fact that I wasn't able to change my keybinds. Don't get me wrong, there's an option for changing them, but the screen wouldn't let me press OK and get on with my game. What's really cool about Flying Heroes is its imagination. You can fly around in a floating city on a winged barrel, shooting down dragons with an icicle cannon. There's a lot more originality than we're used to seeing in modern military shooters. That's one of the things I miss from this time period. The fact that even publisher-backed games had more imagination, and even FPS games could take place in fantastic locations. I personally love the chaotic and crazy multiplayer games like Unreal Tournament, Crash Team Racing, and Power Stone 2. And this one shows great potential as a fun game to play at LAN parties. I wasn't able to test the multiplayer for obvious reasons, but I had fun fighting against the bots. It's not a milestone in FPS design by any means, but it's still a good game that deserves more attention. And I think you could still get a lot more mileage out of this flying FPS idea. Splicing up the old deathmatch formula with things like superpowers and flight combat seems like a no-brainer, yet so many publishers are scared of taking any kind of risk. It's so disappointing that we don't see more experiments like this.
Low ammo.